chapter 22. Luke chapter 22 this morning. Find where I am here. Might be okay. Here we go. Luke chapter 22, I believe, verse 63, Andy's got on the board. Any sick folks we need to mention to begin with? I want to say that Jerry Kill's sister passed away this past week. She was buried yesterday, Dustin, over and around Newton. She was a little bit older, in her 80s, I think. 81. Okay. That's not very old. Not anymore, Dustin. No, it's not, Harold. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's remember the Keel family and the loss of Jerry's sister. Anyone else we need to mention? We haven't talked to Bernice in a few days. We didn't call her after a while. All right. Let's have a word of prayer before we begin. Father, we are so thankful for this good, cool weather that you blessed us with on this first day of the week. Thankful for the first day of the week, for this opportunity that we have to assemble here. As we study together, as we discuss your word, Father, we pray that we can understand it. We pray, Father, that our utmost desire would be to live by it and to be good servants of yours. Pray for those who are not able to be here this morning, especially ask you that your comforting hand be extended to the Keel family upon the loss of Jerry's sister. Bless them all, help them, Father, in every good way. Especially be with us this morning as we discuss your word. Help us to live by it. Forgive us, Father, where we fail to do that. In the name of Christ we ask. Amen. Luke chapter 22, verse 63 this morning. We spent most of our class last week discussing verse 62, where it says, Peter went out and he wept bitterly. And we spent a great deal of our time discussing the idea of godly sorrow, 2 Corinthians chapter 7. How godly sorrow, I think, was expressed by the Apostle Peter as he wept bitterly over what he had just done, knowing that he had denied the Lord. He had denied the Lord for a total of 3 times. And we, of course, notice that our godly sorrow, while it may not be expressed in tears, so there's nothing wrong with the shedding of tears here, as long as it's godly tears, sorrow of a godly sort, to express my deep grief over offending the Lord. But of course, our repentance, our change, our sorrow needs to come from our heart. It needs to be expressed in our heart. And of course, sometimes it's hard for me. I can't see other folks' heart, but the Lord can. So we need to be aware when we hear people asking for prayers of the church that they may not be expressing it with tears, but what's in their heart is, of course, what really counts. But we'll begin this morning with verse 63. Let's read the first down through 65, and we'll stop there for a few minutes. Luke chapter 22, verse 63, and the men that held Jesus mocked him and smote him. And when they had blindfolded him, they struck him on the face and asked him, saying, Prophesy, who is it that smote you? And many other things blasphemously spake they against him. These folks have begun to mock Jesus. Jesus has been denied by Peter 3 times. He's before Caiaphas in the Caiaphas' house there. Other folks are apparently were there. They're mocking him. They're ridiculing him by their actions, by their language, by what we're going to see as they accuse him of. The people that held Jesus, the soldiers and the guards, I suppose. You know, John chapter 18 and verse 3 tells us that Judas had received a band of soldiers. And obviously they're the ones that arrested him, took hold of him out in the Garden of Gethsemane, bound him, and have now brought him before Caiaphas in his house. And so they've begun to hit him. Notice, if you would, Matthew chapter 26. You know, that the ultimate, I guess, insult that anyone could ever receive, Matthew chapter 26 and verse 67, it says, Then did they spit in his face, and they buffeted him, and others smote him with the palms of their hands. To show their utter contempt for this man Jesus, they spit in his face. Anybody have you ever had somebody ever spit in your face? I've been spared that so far, Edgar, thankfully. how would I react? I'm supposed to turn the other cheek, Haley. Would I do that? Would I do that? Be hard to do. I don't know what it is about somebody spitting in someone's face, but that's the ultimate show of contempt, I guess, towards that person. That's just not something that you would do normally. Notice Numbers chapter 12. Numbers chapter 12. Remember when Aaron and Miriam came to Moses? They're complaining to Moses. Numbers chapter 12. Let me get the numbers here. I'm talking and trying to turn at the same time, and I can't do that. Numbers chapter 12. Miriam and her husband Aaron, they've come complaining to Moses. The Lord didn't like what they were complaining about, and so Miriam was struck with leprosy. And of course, Moses prayed that this leprosy would be removed from her. Notice verse 14, the Lord speaking to Moses, the Lord said unto Moses, Moses, if her father has but spit in her face, shouldn't she be ashamed 7 days? She's going to have to go outside the camp. She's going to be healed of leprosy, but she's going to have to go outside where all the other people are out there by herself for 7 days, and then come back and show herself to the priest that she was cured of leprosy. But you know, he's saying to her, you know, it could have been worse. Her daddy could have spit in her own face to show his contempt towards her for complaining about Moses. And so this idea of they're spitting in Jesus' face is not something that anybody would welcome. Nobody would want that for whatever reason. And I just wonder sometimes how I would react. Would I react in the way that I know that I should? But Jesus is being abused by this mob. You know, it's going to be like a game or fun to them. You know, they're going to have a good time with this. You notice verse 64, go back to Luke chapter 22, verse 64, and when they blindfolded him, this is going to make it more fun, Andy. Let's blindfold him. We're spitting in his face. Let's blindfold him now. They struck him on the face, and they told him, look, your prophet, tell us who's hitting you in the face now. With your blindfold on, more good fun, more of a good time with this blindfold on it across his eyes. He can't see anybody, so they're going to slap him in the face, and they're going to tell him, since you're a prophet, you think you're a prophet, people says you're a prophet, tell us who it was that hit you. You can't see, but since you're a prophet, tell us who it was that just hit you. You know, this is this is mob mentality. They've been spitting in his face, shoving him around. Somebody came up with the idea, let's put a blindfold on him and see if he is the prophet that he claims to be. Did Jesus ever claim to be a prophet? Did Jesus himself claim to be a prophet? I couldn't find it. Other people thought that he was a prophet. Matthew 21 and verse 11, they described him as being the prophet of Nazareth. John chapter 6 and verse 14, the people said that he was a prophet. Also John chapter 7 and verse 40, many folks thought that this man Jesus was a prophet. Of course, Jesus did prophesy. But I never could find where it says that Jesus himself claimed to be a prophet himself. But apparently these folks had heard the other people talking, and you know, they think he's a prophet, and so they blindfolded him. Prophesy to us now, Jesus, making light of his claim that he's a prophet. You know, this has got to be really funny. This is a poor guy from Nazareth, remember? Poor guy from Nazareth. You know, any good thing come from Nazareth. We've got this guy, Jesus, who's claiming to be the Son of God, and people claims he's a prophet, and James, everybody knows that's not true. Everybody knows that's not true. So let's just, you know, let's just have a little fun with him. You're just a poor guy from Nazareth. If you're really a prophet, then that's good. Jesus, prophesy for us then. Tell us who slapped you.
That came from Nathan.
Sir?
That came from Nathan when he says any good thing come out of.
Yes. Nathaniel. Yes. Yeah. That's true. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? And you know, that was one of his followers that asked that. But at any rate, Nazareth was a poor little dusty town way outside of Jerusalem, long way out there. Nobody wanted to claim to be from Nazareth. If you're going to be anybody, you need to be from Jerusalem. And this guy was from that little dusty town of Nazareth, and he's just a poor guy, uneducated. Even the thief on the cross in Luke chapter 23, he tells Jesus, they're all three on the cross, if you are the Christ, well, get us down off these crosses. If you are really the Christ, he's trying to help himself here. But these folks are wanting now Jesus to prophesy. Who slapped you in the face this time now?
Isaiah, I believe Isaiah 53.
Yes.
Part of it talks about the fact that he would be as one who is oppressed and afflicted.
Mm-hmm.
It also goes in the same context. I think it's 53 Isaiah.
It is.
About he'd be led sick and sort of, yet he'd open not his mouth and he'd be silent.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to provoke him. From historical record, Jesus spoke not.
Not much. He did finally say something, and we're fixing to see he will say something here. But as far as, he couldn't he spit back at him? When he was reviled, he did what?
He reviled not back.
Reviled not again. No, that would have been my reaction.
He could
Probably.
have, but
Yeah.
would it have been the example that he should have said?
No, he offered no resistance. He didn't complain anything. I'd have been kicking and screaming, Edgar, I'm going to get back at somebody. Especially if they spit in my face. Well, you got to do something about that.
Y'all wait till I'm son of God. Y'all hang on. You expect for this.
Well, they will, and of course he knew that. Anyone else? Notice verse 65, and many other things blasphemously spake they against him. Many other ways. That they spoke blasphemy against this man Jesus. There's two ways to blaspheme. To speak evil of God. Leviticus chapter 24, there's an account there of a woman's son who cursed God, and they took him outside the gate of the town, the city, and stoned him to death. You just don't curse God. And as old as I am today, and when I hear somebody use the term GD, a cold chill goes up my spine literally today. Still. And I just wonder. And sometimes it's totally uncalled for. It's always uncalled for. But it just comes into the conversation with some folks today. And it's gotten worse. I mean, I used to work in the school systems, and when I walked down the hall, you could hear anything from these kids. Anything. It ain't like it used to be. We would have had our head knocked off if we would have said some of the things that these kids say commonly today. But to speak evil of God, that's blasphemy. But a person taking on the attributes of God, and this is what these folks are upset with this man Jesus. If I'm going to stand here today and tell you, you recognize that I'm God's son. Y'all know I'm God's son, don't you? I'm claiming to be God's son. That would be blasphemy for me. I know, and you know, that I'm not God's son, but every time you see me, I'm going to tell you again that I'm God's son. That's blasphemy. I'm putting myself on the same level as being the chosen one of God. Notice John chapter 10. These folks are accusing Jesus of blasphemy. He's claiming to be, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit, the Son of God. Did he ever claim that publicly? John chapter 10 and verse 36, Jesus is talking here. He said, you folks say of him, talking about himself, you're talking about me, whom God the Father has sanctified, set apart, whom God the Father has sent into the world. You're a blasphemer, Jesus, because I said I am the Son of God. They're accusing him of blasphemy, which I would be doing also here this morning. If I claim to be the Son of God, he's claiming to be the Son of God. And so he's blaspheming against God because he claims to be God's son. Notice John chapter 19 and verse 7. They're accusing him of blasphemy. That's the reason they're going to put him to death. Not 17. John chapter 19 and verse 7. They're before Pilate now. Notice verse 6. When the chief priests, therefore, and the officers saw him, they cried out, saying, Pilate, crucify him. Pilate said unto them, look, take him and crucify him, for because I find no fault in him. And the Jews answered, we have a law, and by our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God. He's blaspheming. He claims to be the Son of God. This dirt poor character from Nazareth now, standing here before all of us educated folks and well-off folks, claiming to be the Son of God. We need to stone him to death and get him out of our sight. The Messiah of the world, the Christ, he's an uneducated, poor guy from Nazareth. Who in their right mind would believe that now? Notice John chapter 12. Eddie referred to Isaiah chapter 53 just a minute ago. John chapter 12, notice verse 37. And though Jesus had done so many miracles before him, yet they believed not on him. We're going to come back to that in just a few minutes. But notice verse 38, that the saying of Isaiah the prophet might be fulfilled, which he spake. You know, they didn't believe him because even though he was doing a lot of miracles. But so that the prophet Isaiah, which he spake, Lord, who's going to believe this report? Who in the world is going to believe, Lord, what I'm prophesying here about this poor guy from Nazareth? Who's going to believe that now? James, not many people are going to believe that. He's just a poor fellow like me you think that I was rightfully so a nut because I'm claiming to be the Son of God now. And that's the way these folks looked at him. Lord, who's going to believe this report? To these folks, you know, they're making fun of someone who's simply claiming to be God's Son. And they're condemning him for blasphemy. And yet, as we notice here in Luke chapter 22 and verse 65, and many other things, they blasphemously spake of him. They're the ones who were committing blasphemy against the Son of God. They were guilty of what they were accusing Jesus of being guilty of themselves. Anyone have any comment?
Can we blaspheme today in the same manner?
We can in the same manner, yes. Just by the way that we live, the way that we act. I don't have to say that he's not the Son of God, but the way that I act, yes, sometimes I can express that for sure. So let's begin now in verse 66. We'll read down through verse 69 now. Luke chapter 22, verse 66. As soon as it was day, the elders of the people and the chief priests and the scribes came together and led him into their council, saying, Art thou the Christ? Tell us. And he said unto them, If I tell you, you won't believe me. And if I also ask you, you will not answer me, and you won't let me go. Hereafter shall the Son of Man sit on the right hand of the power of God. Going back to verse 66, as soon as it got daylight. Remember, Peter has denied the Lord 3 times. The rooster finally has crowed again. The sun's coming up. Matthew 27 and verse 1, it says when the morning was come, you know, when they take Jesus to Pilate, John chapter 18, verse 28, it says that it was early in the morning. So they're getting around now just at daylight now. They're going to take him to their council. What's this council thing? Pardon me? The Sanhedrin Council. And that, of course, is true. Does the name Sanhedrin appear in the Bible? Is it in the Bible? Ain't in the Bible. That history tells us that they called it the Sanhedrin Council, but that word name is not in the Bible. That comes from history, of course, but it's just a supreme Jewish court of justice. Be like our Supreme Court today. They take him before this council. Is it 70 or 71 members, Andy? I don't know. 70, I think, or 71 people on this council. You know, and that's where they're taking him to now. You know, the chief priest, which is Caiaphas, he's already seen Jesus and some of the other folks, but that wasn't the total council. They had to have a quorum, a majority of the council there to make any decision, and so they're going to take him now to the council since it's daylight. I would imagine this council didn't meet at daylight every time that they met. Probably they sent word around, we need y'all to assemble over here where we're going to assemble. Y'all all be there, and shortly, because we've arrested this man Jesus, remember we were after him, we've got him, and we need to make a decision concerning him now. So they've got a quorum together. They're going to take him to the council. But notice something about this. These folks had already met. Back with him, Matthew chapter 26. Matthew chapter 26, where is it at? Well, we'll just start in verse 1. Matthew 26. This is before now Jesus is led to the next meeting of this council. But Matthew 26, verse 1. It came to pass when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he told his disciples, you folks know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. This is 2 days prior to what we're talking about now in Luke chapter 22. 2 days prior to the Passover feast, 2 days prior to his arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane, 2 days prior to his standing before Caiaphas here. But now notice verse 3. Then assembled together the chief priest and the scribes and the elders of the people into the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas. And they consulted, that they talked about that they might take Jesus by subtlety and kill him. They've already decided what they're going to do. Their minds is made up. They've already come together and discussed all of this. And so now, as we go back to Luke chapter 22, we've got Jesus now. We need you to meet with the council. We're going to have a business meeting now. And we already know what our decision was. We just need to come together and stamp it. And, we want everybody to see we've got Jesus anyway. They've already met beforehand, and they made this decision to kill him. Jesus is now taken before these same folks. And they're just going to confirm what's already been decided. Jesus has already been condemned to die. So this council, they decided to kill him. Could they carry out the death penalty? No. Notice John chapter 18. That's the reason that they took him to Pilate. John chapter 18 and verse 31, verse 29, Pilate went out unto them and said, what accusation bring you against this man here? They answered and said, well, look, Pilate, if he wasn't a malefactor, we wouldn't have brought him over here. Why are you asking something like that? He's a troublemaker. That's the reason he's here. Verse 31, then Pilate said unto them, well, look, take him and judge him according to your law. And Judas therefore said unto him, it is not lawful for us to put any man to death. Pilate, he's guilty of blasphemy. The punishment for blasphemy under the old law is death, stoning, death, whatever it might be. This is going to be crucifixion. And Pilate, that's the reason that we brought him to you. He's guilty of blasphemy, and under our law, he needs to be put to death. We can't do that. You have the authority to do that, Pilate, so that's the reason that we're here in front of you now. Notice now verse 67. Verse 67, that they're going to ask Jesus now, they're before the whole council, are you the Christ? Tell us. They begin to question Jesus. Now, apparently the fun and games is over with, at least for the time being. He's before the whole council. Are you the Christ? Are they asking that because they really want to know if he's the Christ? I'm sure it was asked in a malicious way, and whatever answer, the answer that he's going to give is going to be used to condemn him. It's like asking somebody, yes or no, have you quit beating your wife? Time. Did you ever say he was the Christ? Matthew 16 and verse 20, Jesus has asked these 12 apostles, who do men say that I am? You know, some say you're Elijah, some say, you know, whatever, Elijah and others, Jeremiah and one of the prophets. But who do you say I am? Matthew 16:16. Peter makes the confession that you are the Christ, the Son of God. Notice verse 20. And charged Jesus, his disciples, that they should tell no man that he was Jesus the Christ. Don't tell nobody. Don't tell nobody.
But in verse 17, he really confessed that he was the Christ.
Yeah.
That's Peter, for your flesh and blood is not good you, and my Father is in heaven. Peter, God told you I was the Christ.
Yes. But maybe, let me rephrase my question. Did he ever make that claim publicly? Publicly. Everybody knows he's running around claiming to be the Christ. He told them here, you know, you're right, but don't tell nobody. I couldn't find where Jesus ever publicly made the claim that I'm the Christ, the Son of God. Now, if you want to go to find my place here again, Mark 14:16, while he's there being questioned by them, he says, "I am." You know, and that's where they really get on to him there. But during all of this ministry, did he ever claim to be the Christ? And we're gonna look at something else connected this with that in just a minute. You know, if that question had been asked in a sincere way, they could have recognized that he was the Christ, but they simply wanted him to say it so they could condemn him right there of blasphemy. He claimed to be the Son of God. He claimed to be the Christ. But notice what Jesus says there as we go back to Luke chapter 22. If I tell you, well, you wouldn't believe me. If he told them plainly that he was the Christ, they wouldn't believe him. And Jesus knows that. Did he know that they had already prejudged him? Probably. He knew that this was God's plan, that he's going to be crucified on the cross. But he knows that if he tells them that I'm the Christ, they're still not going to believe him because they're thinking he's going to be guilty of blasphemy. He's still this poor guy from Nazareth standing there claiming to be the Christ, about like me. And you know, that's the way they're looking at that. Verse 68. But notice, if I ask you something, you won't answer me. If I tell you I'm the Christ, you won't believe me. If I ask you a question, you won't answer it. They've already seen convincing proof that he was the Christ, but they simply didn't want him. This is not going to be the king of Israel. You know, these folks, like the apostles, they were still convinced that the Christ is coming and he's going to replace King David on a physical throne. Now we've got this poor guy dressed not very nicely, not much to look at, and he's claiming he's going to be the Son of God, and they're viewing this as he's going to be the king over Israel. He's going to take King David's place. And no, I don't think so. No, this ain't the Messiah, the king that we're looking for. But you know, if Jesus was to prove to him right now that he was the Christ, you know, if he was to perform a miracle right then and ask him, well, now what do you think now? They're not going to have that. He's still the poor guy from Nazareth. Their mind is made up. He said, you wouldn't let me go. If I prove that without any doubt that I am the Christ, you would not let me go. These folks many of them had already seen convincing proof, but they weren't interested in that. Many of these folks had understood that he was the Christ. He should have been the Christ. And if he were to perform a miracle for those folks right then and there, they still wouldn't believe him. Remember when Jesus went back to Nazareth, his hometown where he grew up, and he was teaching in the synagogue, and they're looking at him and saying, what? We know you. I grew up with you. We know your mama, your brothers and your sisters. We know you, and you're not what you claim to be here. Who told you to teach something like that? How many miracles did Jesus do there in Nazareth at that time? 0. Because of their unbelief, he did not perform not one miracle for them. It was a waste of time. They know him. He's not a prophet. He's not the the Messiah. He's not the Christ. This is a waste of time. It'd be like casting your pearls before swine. They don't care. Notice Matthew chapter 9. What does it take, what would it take for Jesus to perform a miracle in front of people who really ain't interested in it? Why do that to begin with? Matthew chapter 9, verse 27 here. Jesus has come upon two blind men. Matthew chapter 9, verse 27, and when Jesus departed thence, two blind men followed him, crying, saying, Thou son of David, have mercy on us. And when Jesus was coming to the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said unto them, Do you believe that I'm able to do this? And they said, Yes, Lord. And then he touched their eyes, according to your faith, be it done unto you. They believed that Jesus could perform a miracle. They believed that Jesus was who he said he was. The people of Nazareth, they questioned that. They didn't believe him, so he didn't perform no miracle. They're wanting Jesus here in Luke, going back to Luke chapter 22. I can prove to you that I'm the Christ, but you're still not going to believe it. And you still wouldn't let me go. There's no need to perform a miracle for this council. They're not going to believe that. Notice John chapter 11. John chapter 11, this is the account of Lazarus when he died. Notice who all's there. Notice who all is going to go back and tell this council what's happened out there. Lazarus is dead. John chapter 11, verse 19, many of the Jews came to Mary and Martha to comfort them. Lots of other Jews there. You remember, this is in Bethany. Bethany's on the Mount of Olives. It's not far from Jerusalem. You know, they can get there in a couple of hours or so, maybe, whatever it is. But many of the Jews have come there because their brother Lazarus has died. Verse 31, that the Jews which were in her house and comforted her, they're there. Notice verse 36. Notice verse 35. Jesus wept and said, the Jews that were there, behold how he loved him. Some of the Jews said, well, could not this man which had opened the eyes of the blind, they knew he had healed a blind man that we just read about, couldn't he have caused that even this man Lazarus should not have died? Lots of Jews there. Notice verse 45. And many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus did, they believed on him. He raised Lazarus from the dead. And many of these Jews were there, and they saw that this man Lazarus, who was dead, he's alive now. Many of the Jews which came to Mary, this is verse 45 again, many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus done, they believed on him. But notice verse 46, but some of them went their ways to the Pharisees. Let's go back to Jerusalem and tell them folks back there what's happened. Part of the council now. And they told them what things Jesus had done. Verse 47, then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council and said, what are we going to do? Because this man is doing many miracles. They know he's already done many miracles. With another miracle now in front of the council here in Luke chapter 22, would that do any good now? They know he's done many miracles. If you're still in John chapter 12, notice verse 9. Much people, the Jews, therefore knew that Jesus was there. Jesus has gone back to Bethany where Lazarus and Mary and Martha, his two sisters, were living. Lazarus had been raised from the dead. Many Jews now knew that Jesus was back at Lazarus' house, and they came out. They came not just for Jesus' sake, but they also wanted to see Lazarus also, whom he had raised from the dead. I never did get a chance to go over there and see Lazarus. I heard he had died, James. But this man Jesus, who raised him from the dead, he's back over there at their house. Let's go over there and see Lazarus. By the way, Jesus is there too. But notice this, verse 10. But the chief priests consulted that they might put Lazarus also to death, because that by reason of him, many of the Jews went away and believed on Jesus. They knew he'd perform miracles. They knew he'd raised somebody from the dead, but that didn't make them no difference. There's lots of evidence. The dead man was raised from the dead. We need to get rid of Jesus and Lazarus too. You know, that he had replaced a man's ear out in the Garden of Gethsemane. They probably had heard about that too. But they're still not going to let him go. And Jesus knew that. Any comment?
I don't know if there's nothing he could have done to got out of crucifixion.
Say that again?
I don't believe there's nothing he could have done to have gotten out of the crucifixion.
No. They weren't going to have it. People are like that today. It doesn't matter what the truth. I mean, it's plain as the handwriting on your hand or something. People just ain't going to accept some certain things. They just ain't going to have it because they just don't want it. And that's the way that these people were too. This is not what they envisioned the Christ to be. And he's got to be an imposter. I don't care how many people he raises for put in. That's absurd, of course, but they just didn't want that. Notice verse 69. Still Jesus talking. Hereafter shall the Son of Man sit on the right hand of God. After this is over, when all this is over, hereafter, the Son of Man is going to be sitting at the right hand of God. Jesus, of course, is in a way explaining to them his ascension to God the Father. But notice something about this now. The Son of Man. Jesus has many times referred to himself as being the Son of Man. We haven't found that he claimed to be a prophet. We haven't claimed that he publicly claimed to be the Christ. Many times Jesus referred to himself as being the Son of Man. He's been described as being the Son of God. That would, of course, indicate his divine nature. He was described as being the Son of David, that was involved being the king of Israel. But the Son of Man. Why does he talk about himself so much as being the Son of Man? Ever thought about that? I hadn't. He was he's always the Son of Man.
Well, he was the Son of Man. He was born of a woman.
Okay, exactly. He was human.
Yeah.
I never had dug into that. Many times he refers to himself as the Son of Man. Sometimes that was described to show his job. Notice Luke chapter 19, and Burnell is exactly right. He was born of a woman. He was born as a human being. Luke chapter 19 and verse 10, for the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which was lost. The Son of Man, not the Son of God, not the Christ, but the Son of a human being has come to seek and to save that which was lost. Notice Matthew chapter 20. Sometimes he described himself as being the Son of Man to illustrate his death, burial, and his resurrection. Matthew chapter 20, I'm almost there, verses 18 and 19. Behold, we go to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man shall be betrayed of the chief priests and of the scribes, and be condemned to him to death, and they will deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and to scourge and to crucify him, and the third day he'll rise from the dead. He's still the Son of Man there. Notice, if you would, Matthew chapter 24, still describing himself as being the Son of Man, verse 37, as in the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. People are going to be surprised when the Son of Man comes again. Verse 44, therefore be ye also ready, for at such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man is coming. He refers to himself as the son of a human being. He describes himself as being a human being. We've got time to do this locally. Notice John chapter 5.
If you go back to Luke 1, it tells that his genealogy
Yes.
of Jesus up to the time of Mary and Joseph. So
Yes.
he was born of
Yeah.
Mary and Joseph or Mary.
Yes, you're right. Andy, what'd you say?
I think that gives credence to the fact that the Hebrew writer tells us he was tempted in all points of view, we are yet without sin.
Exactly. Yes.
Was he the Son of Man? Yes.
We're going to stand before the judge who's been given the authority to judge us. We're going to see that in just a minute. Because he was the Son of Man.
It qualifies him to be our Savior.
Yes. We'll go there in just a minute. John chapter 5, verse 25. Yeah. Verily I say unto you, the hour is coming, and now is when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and they shall hear and shall live. For as the Father has life in himself, so that he'll give to the Son to have life in himself. Now notice verse 27. God the Father has given him authority to execute judgment because he is the Son of Man. He's the Son of Man, and he's been given the authority to execute judgment. He's given him the authority to execute judgment and given him authority to judge because he is the Son of Man. He's the Son of God because he is that's his divine side. He's the Son of man, but to illustrate his human side. Luke chapter 3 and verse 23, this is something that Bernal was referring to. It says there that he was supposed, as it was supposed, he was Joseph's son. People thought he was Joseph's son. We know that he wasn't Joseph's son. He was the son of Mary. The term, he is the Son of Man. Well, he's the son of Mary. Mary's female. But the term man is used to show people regardless of their gender. Notice Matthew chapter 17. Matthew chapter 17 and verse 9. As they came down from the mountain, this is Peter, James, and John on the Mount of Transfiguration. As they came down from the mountain, Jesus charged those three, saying, "Tell the vision to no man until the Son of Man be risen." Don't tell any man what y'all just saw. That means you can tell the women, though. And you know what happens when you tell a woman something? We won't go there, Jay. But don't tell no man. He's talking about men and women there. It's not just don't tell the men. Notice John chapter 3 and verse 5, Jesus talking to Nicodemus there. Jesus answered, "Verily I say unto you, except a man be born of water." Woman don't have to be born of water. Yeah. He's using the term man there to include men and women. He's the Son of Man because he's the son of Mary specifically. He's the son of a human being. And Jesus knows as a human being, as a man, the things that we go through in this life. Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 24. This is a little bit comforting to know that we've got a judge that knows what we go through in this life. Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 24. For Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the truth, but Christ is entered into heaven itself, appearing in the presence of God for us. He's going to be seated at the right hand of God, the Son of Man. Jesus is telling them in Luke chapter 22. The Son of Man is going to be sitting at the right hand of God. The Hebrew writer tells us he's there for us. We're going to stand before the judgment seat of the Son of Man, the Son of God, the Son of Man. And what would qualify Jesus more to qualify us than being the Son of God who will execute righteous judgment, and the Son of Man who was a human who's gone through the same things that we've gone through in this life. Notice Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 15. For we have not a high priest. This sort of goes at it in the backwards way. We have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but he was in all points tempted like as we are, and yet he was without sin. The high priest that we have today, Jesus Christ, was someone who could be touched with the feelings of our infirmities. He knows what our feelings, our weaknesses are, our infirmities are. He's touched by those weaknesses that we have. He's been there and he's done all of that just as a Son of Man, as a human. He's going to represent us to God the Father. Notice Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 25. Wherefore, he is able to save them to the uttermost that come unto God by him, seeing that he ever liveth to make intercession for them. He's been here on this earth. He lived just like us. He's gone through the same thing as we go through today. He was without sin, but James, he knows what it's like. We're going to stand before a righteous judge it's meant as a divine justice, but knowing that we're human and that he was human, he can put the human element into it also. That's what I get from that. He describes himself as being the Son of Man, and he does that repeatedly, more than once. Andy?
Let's see if I can complicate the situation for Wednesday night.
Okay.
Revelation chapter 14, he's talking about the 144,000 and the vision of the angels. There's three, in the context, there's three angels being talked about. But in Revelation 14 chapter and verse 6, and I saw another angel flying in the midst of the heavens, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tongue, tribe, and people, with a loud voice. Tell them to fear God. But then notice down in verse 14 of the same context, he says, that I looked and beheld a white cloud, and on that cloud sat like one like the Son of Man, and he was told, go and to reap. And he put forth his sickle in the context and went forth to reap. The Son of Man is described there as the one who comes back to reap, and that's Christ.
Yes.
And when it comes to 144,000, in premillennial theory, you've got to reckon the Son of Man back to the Son of God. Really, it's
Point.
chapters of context. Of that.
Yeah, okay. We're gonna discuss that Wednesday night.
No, but that's about 6 months. At the rate we're going, about 6 months.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, we're out of time. We're past time. Next week, Lord willing, we'll begin with verse 70 next week. We'll get close to the end of the chapter. Maybe we'll get into chapter 23 next week. Who knows? But thank you for your attention, your help this morning.